This video will teach you how to utilize an Angular NgTemplateOutlet directive to create reusable components with customizable and extensible views. You will learn everything you have to know about this directive because I'm going to cover all its available features like creating views from Angular templates, how to provide template context data, and how to control the proper Angular Dependency Injection flow in the embedded views. So if you watch this video until the end, you can be sure that you will be able to solve 80% of use cases where you need to implement customizable view for your Angular components. If you are first time on my channel, my name is Dmitry, and here you can find a lot of advanced Angular tutorials and courses. You can check them out later, but now let's get started and enjoy this video. Alright, let's get started, and let me very quickly onboard you and demonstrate the current application, what kind of problems this application has, and how we're going to fix those problems. So as you can see, I've got some Angular component that renders the weather forecast, and it also has a couple of buttons that perform some actions. So we can refresh data of this widget, and we can copy information to our clipboard in order to, paste it somewhere. Of course, all this data and actions, those are mocked data. I didn't want to bring the real implementation because I wanted to keep stuff simple. So yeah, this is how it looks like, and there is our component rendered right here. And here you can see the implementation of this component. As you can see, pretty straightforward. We have just some template that renders some data. This data comes from some certain state. This state is represented as a separate service that is provided on the for the injector of the weather widget, which means that those services, they will be singletons in scope of this component and all its children, right? The same for widget actions. Widget actions, those are a set of just mocked services that supposed to perform some useful actions. And yeah, this is how it looks like. You can see pretty straightforward. Widget state is also very, very simple. And what else? This inject function, for those who just started with Angular, this is same as an injection via constructor. So you could see probably the construction like this one, right? And this is pretty much the same as this notation, right? This is just a new way to do that. All right. And now let's quickly talk about problems and limitations the problem has. And actually the biggest problem here is the component template, because if you have a look at it, you can easily notice that the template is completely hard-coded and you cannot change it, you cannot customize it, and it might be a big problem if you decide to distribute this component as a part of some component library, or if you need to reuse this component in another part of your application, but you have to change somehow look and feel of this component. It is not possible, and it is a problem. And I'm going to tell you in advance that there are a couple of ways of how to customize the view of Angular components. The first way is to use NG content directive. It is also known as a content projection. And another approach is to create embedded view from Angular templates. And this is exactly the approach I'm going to use in this video because I find it a bit more flexible compared to content projection. But if you'd like to learn more about content projection as well, please let me know about that in the comments under this video and hit thumbs up. If I get enough, let's say 1000 likes under this video, I will recognize that this topic might be interesting for you and I will create a dedicated video about that. But now let's move forward. Let's move forward and let's quickly talk about how do we create embedded views in Angular. So in order to create embedded view in Angular, we need to have basically two things. We have to have some container. It's kind of anchor where exactly in the view needs to be rendered the embedded view. And then we have to have the template that needs to be instantiated and eventually rendered, right? Right. So the container can be actually any HTML node. Yeah, we could create another div and mark it as a container using the template variable. Yeah, and if we want to create Angular template from some piece of HTML code, then we have to use the NgTemplate and place the HTML that is going to be the Angular template right between those two tags. And what is interesting about NgTemplate is that it is lazy. So if I save it right now, you can see that everything disappeared. It is because we have to explicitly create the view from this template and only then it will be visible. So how we usually create the embedded view? In order to do that, we have to get reference to those two things, to the container and to the NgTemplate. So let maybe name it as a default widget header. And then we can easily get reference to them by using the view child decorator. So I get reference first to the container, and here is very important thing. If I leave it as it is, then I will get reference to the native div element, and this is not what I'm going to achieve. I want to read from here the view container ref, right? And if I want to get reference to it, I have to specify the config object for the view child and provide here the read property and say what exactly I want to read from this node. And from here, I'm going to read the view container ref like that. So here I have to create a property. Here we go, and it's going to be the instance of view container ref, obviously, right? And then I have to do the similar thing for the default widget header. So let's create another view child, get a reference to the default widget header template. Here I don't need to specify anything because I need to get a direct reference to the NgTemplate, right? So let's name it header template, and it's going to be the template ref, means reference to the template, right? And let it be any for now. We will talk about this type later in this video. But it is not enough. Those two just references, right? And because we get references using view child, it means that those guys, they will be available only when the component view is instantiated. And we have a dedicated lifecycle hook for that called ng after view init, right? And inside this lifecycle hook, those guys, as I said, will be available. So I can use my container, right, and call the method create embedded view. And this method expects the template that needs to be rendered. And I already have such a reference, and it is a header template property. So like that, and if I save it right now, you can see that the header view is back, and let's have a look how it looks in the HTML. So here's our widget header, and this is the container, right? This is exactly this div, and next to the container they were rendered widget title and widget subtitle, and those guys, they are coming from the Angular template that we created before. I know you might be slightly confused because you probably expected that the template will be rendered inside the container, right? But no, it will be rendered next to the container node. And if you want to get rid from this HTML tag, you can always use such a thing called NgContainer. And in this case, you can see that that empty div has disappeared because ng-container, it is being rendered eventually into nothing. Yeah, it works just like a placeholder for some HTML nodes. But let's quickly get back to our current implementation. And the way we implemented this feature right now, it is so-called declarative paradigm in programming, because we explicitly specify steps that needs to be performed in order to get some desired result. Yeah, so we say that, okay, get the reference to the container, get the reference to the header template, then inside ng after view init lifecycle hook, create the embedded view, blah 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 blah. So we describe how things needs to be done. From another side, there exists declarative paradigm that describes what needs to be done. For instance, I need to have embedded view created, so here is the template, please create it. I don't care how it will be done, I just need the final result. So this is the declarative paradigm in programming. And usually declarative programming is more readable and easier to understand. And in order to implement this current feature we have right now, but using declarative way, we have to use NgTemplateOutlet directive that allows us to do that. So finally we started to talk about this directive, because I don't want just to show the feature, I want to teach you why this feature exists and which problems does it solve. So how it would look like when we apply the NgTemplateOutlet directive. So I can completely remove this stuff. Then we obviously have to import this directive. Yes, so let's do that. So I type NgTemplateOutlet, or you could inject also a common module. It is part of the common module, but yeah, as you want. And once we have this directive imported, we can apply it to our ng container just like that. And as a value for it, we have to provide a reference to the template that needs to be eventually rendered. So like that. And as you can see, it works the same way, but it is more readable and less code needed in order to achieve the same goal. And I can also remove all those stuff as well. Nice. And there is no any magic here actually. Under the hood, if we have a look at the source code of this directive, you can see that it does pretty much the same. Yeah, it has more like conditions, whatever, but eventually it has also view container ref, and it creates embedded view and provides the template that needs to be rendered, and then context, injector, like those stuff we will cover later in this video. But in a nutshell, it is pretty much the same what we have implemented just a couple of minutes ago. All right, now, what benefits we can get from refactoring our code to using TemplateOutlet plus Angular template? It means that here we can dynamically provide any template we want. We can allow user to provide alternative templates. We can do it by using just regular inputs. So I create some separate input, I name it like header template, I say that it needs to be the template ref, again, so far it is any type. And having that, I can just do something like that. I can say that, okay, render the template that user provided via component input, or if it's not provided, then use default widget header as a fallback. And that's it. So I can save it. You can see that nothing has changed, but now I can go to app component and create some new NgTemplate. And I can say here that this is some alternative widget header, and there inside I can place some alternative template, right? So I can create something like that, and here place something like today's weather, yeah? And then the reference to this template I can easily provide via this new header template input, just like that. And if I save it right now, you can see that the header got the new template that was provided from outside. So we replaced the default header with the new one. And if I remove this input from here, it will fall back to the default one, right? So this is the first cool thing that you can implement using NgTemplateOutlet directive. And yeah, another thing I forgot to say about the style. So most probably you want to apply some styles for this new alternative template. You can define styles in the component where this template is declared. So I declare it inside app component. So somewhere here I can place the styles for my alternative header, right? And if I save it, those styles were applied. So let me close this and let's move forward to the next feature. So imagine that we want to implement the same thing, but for our widget content. So let's get started to do that. So I would need to duplicate this input, right? And just maybe rename it. So I say that this is content template, and then I have to create a similar construction for widget template as well. So I create ng container, where I also apply the NgTemplateOutlet directive, right? And there I have to create also the templates. So let's create another NgTemplate like that. And I say that this is the default widget content, like that. And this NgTemplate should wrap this HTML. So here we go. What I forgot to provide actually values to the NgTemplateOutlet directive. So I say that it needs to take other content template provided from user, or it should have a fallback that points to this NgTemplate. So here we go. Then in order to provide the alternative content view for this widget, you probably go to the app component. You are going to create a new NgTemplate. You are very excited that finally you will customize this component. You start to bring some new alternative view, but then you quickly realize that, okay, you need to render the temperature, but where we will take this data? So here it is pretty much clear. Yeah, we get it from the state. This is the property of this component, but here we don't actually have the access to this data. One of your suggestions could be like, okay, we could get actually the reference to the weather widget component instance using viewChild decorator, right? And once we get the reference, we could simply read the state property from the component and then render the value we need inside the alternative template. The solution would theoretically work, and in practice it would also work, but this solution is quite terrible, because imagine that you have not only one weather widget here, but you have, I know, dozens of them. Then you would need to get reference to all of them, track if you properly resolve states for each of these weather widget instances. Also, you might have the implementation of the component where the state is protected or private. Then even if you get a reference to it, you will not be able to read this property because it is just protected. Yeah? So this solution isn't the best one, and let me show you another one that works perfectly for that. And this is where NgTemplateOutlet context property comes into the play. And template context, it is nothing else as just data that is available for some particular Angular template. And in order to provide this data to that template, we have to use a special property of the NgTemplateOutlet directive, and it is simply called NgTemplateOutlet context. And as I said, it is just data which can be represented as an object, and we can say that for this template there can be available variable like temperature, and the value for the temperature will be the data that we will read from the state, so something like that. And of course you can provide multiple options, so you can provide actually anything you want. We can also do the following thing, and instead of providing variables one by one, we can just simply provide the whole state to it, right? So I can do something like that and provide just whole state. And here in the generic of the template ref, we define exactly the context, so the list of variables that might be available. And here we can say that we provide the widget state for the content template, right? So I can save it. And then inside the alternative template right here, by the way, let's name it like alt widget content. Here, in order to read the variable I provided right here, I have to use the following syntax. We define the let, like a variable. Then after the dash, we define the name of this variable that will be eventually used inside the template. Yeah, so I can say that this is going to be state. And here inside the quotes, you have to specify to which exactly key of the template context object you want to get a reference. In my case, I want to read this key state. Yeah, so I can copy it and provide it between the quotes, and in such a way I will get a reference to this value. Also, if you have ever worked before with templates and context, you must probably encounter the very special key called implicit, like that. And this implicit key means that it is default value of this context, which means that you don't need to specify it explicitly like we did right here inside the quotes, and we can leave it just like that. And the value with the key explicit, so means the state in our case, it will be automatically assigned to this state variable. And now I'm ready to use this variable inside my template. So I could do something like the following. So I can use the state, then I could read the data from it, and I would like to read temperature, right? Here we go. Then if you don't mind, I will do the similar thing for the rest of the properties, like sky condition, and then the same thing also for the wind. So here we go. And now I can provide this alternative widget content to the weather widget component. Likewise, I did it for the template header, right? But this time I have to use the input content template and provide it as it is. And now if I save it, look, it works perfectly and it properly reads the data that we provided for the context. Yeah, so we will read the real data from the widget state because we provided it as a context right here. And this is really cool and powerful thing. All right, I hope you are still with me and I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, it is a great time to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you didn't do it yet, and hit thumbs up to this video because it will motivate me to create more videos like that. But now let's move forward and let's also customize this action buttons, yeah, and provide the alternative view for this part as well. So I will go to the weather widget, and here I'm going to implement pretty much the same thing like I did for the previous two containers, but this time it's going to be the action template, right? And where it is here I have to create a new ng container that also has NgTemplateOutlet directive attached, and here we will provide the content template, right, or the default widget action, and we have to create this template, right? We already know how to do that. We have to create NgTemplate like that and place those two buttons inside, and also we have to give some name for this NgTemplate. Here we go, done. Then let's get back to the app component and create the alternative view for this section as well. So it's going to be a new NgTemplate. And this time here inside, I want to render not just HTML, but I want to render the component. And we can do that actually. So let's generate one. I just run the following command right here. It will generate a component for me that I can immediately import into my app component. So it is a weather custom action component. And then I can also use it like this. Right? Then of course I would like to apply this new template to the weather widget. So let's do it right now. Here we go. Let's save it and you can see that my new component has been rendered inside. And now let's jump to this new component. And what I actually want to have right here is just one single button that reloads the widget data and immediately copies it. So basically it has to merge two actions we had before, but perform it in one click. So the text will be like reload and copy. And here is the question. We have to somehow trigger actions from the weather widget component. You might think that, okay, this template, where it is, here we go. This template will be rendered inside the weather widget component, right? So it will be rendered right here. So theoretically, we could try to inject the parent weather widget component into weather custom action component. So we could do something like weather widget and then inject the weather widget component. And from here, we have to create the click listener like that. And then inside this on-click handler, we could do something like weather widget. Then we get access to actions, right? And then we can, what we have to do first, reload, right? And then immediately after that, we copy data. So you would do something like that. But if you have a look at the console, you can see that we have an error, that there is no provider for the weather widget component. This problem appears because the parent injector of the component that is created inside the embedded view like we have right now, the parent injector of this component will point out to the component where this component has been declared and not where it is eventually rendered. So the parent injector for the weather custom action component is the injector of the app component and not the one from the weather widget component. So when the weather custom action component tries to resolve the parent weather widget component, it does the following thing. It first of all checks its own injector, if there is provider for the weather widget component. It finds nothing because there is no provider, and then it goes to the parent injector and tries to resolve it there. But in this case, the parent injector points to app component injector, and app component injector also doesn't have any provider for the weather widget component. And then Angular goes traverse the whole node injector hierarchy, then it checks the environment injector hierarchy, finds nothing, and then we see this error. This process I actually described very well in the dedicated video about dependency injections. So if it is not very clear what I'm talking about right now, I would recommend you to check out that video as well. But yeah, how we can solve this issue? So we can actually explicitly provide which injector needs to be used as a parent for the components inside the embedded view. And we can provide it as a property for the NgTemplateOutlet directive. So actually we could do the following thing. We can provide NgTemplateOutlet Injector, and this feature available, by the way, since Angular 14. So make sure that you use Angular 14 and above in order to apply this feature. And here you can provide any injector you want. You can create another one if you need, but what you actually want to do is to reuse the current injector from the weather widget and provide it as a parent injector for the components inside this embedded view. So let's create injector property and then inject injector. So here we go. And then I can use this property as an argument for this input. So like that. And if I save it, you can see that the error disappeared. And if I click reload and copy, those actions will be executed because the weather custom action could properly inject the widget component and trigger its actions. All right, and now let's very quickly recap all the key points we have learned in this quite a long video. So if you want to declaratively render some Angular template, you have to use NgTemplateOutlet directive, and you can provide some reference to the template that needs to be eventually rendered. You can provide templates conditionally depending of which template needs to be rendered, and it allows you to easily customize the view of your component and make it very flexible and extensible. If you need to provide some data for your templates, you can use the template context and use the property NgTemplateOutlet context for it. Here as a value you can provide any object you want, and this object will be available inside the template via this syntax that let dash and then any name of the variable, and then you can specify some exact key that needs to be assigned to this template variable. If you have a key explicit in this context object, it will be the default value for it. The next important point is that if you render inside your template some component, then by default the parent injector for this component will be point to the injector of the component where this template is declared and not where it is rendered. So that's why you have to explicitly provide where it is the injector for the Angular template, and this injector will be eventually used as a parent for the components that were rendered inside this embedded view. And now just a few words about the limitations of this approach and some, so to say, downsides. So the first limitation is that templates here, they always have any type. They cannot be easily inferred, at least there is no official way to do that at this point in time when I record this video. Maybe in the future it will be fixed, but those templates, they are not strict. So there is a chance of typo and some mistakes in your templates. Yeah, so this is something you have to care about. Yes, there are some workarounds, but I will drop it for this video and I will rather post it as a separate front-end snack. So subscribe to my social media profiles to not miss it. And overall, you will get a lot of another useful information from my short tips and tricks. This is the first kind of limitation. Another thing I would like to highlight, it is not a limitation but rather downside, it is the template syntax. Yeah, I know a lot of developers do not like it. I also cannot say that I'm a fan of this syntax, but yeah, well, we don't have any other alternative, so we have to use that. I also don't like this magical keyword like implicit for the default value, so it is not obvious to me. I think so. I think it could be improved, but this is something, you know, that we just have to accept and use it. All right, guys, that's it for today. I hope this video was useful, and if so, please don't forget to share it with your colleagues and friends, and don't forget to check out my advanced Angular video courses. Links to them you will find in the video description, as well as some coupon codes. Also, please share your thoughts in the comment section for this video. Please share with me, what do you think about this feature? Have you ever used that? If so, in which use cases? Maybe I forgot to mention something. I think it would be very interesting discussion in the comments. Otherwise, I wish you productive. Wait a second, this video is the last in the year 2022, so I wish you all the best and big success in the next upcoming 2023. So stay safe. I hope this year will be better, definitely better than the previous one. So stay healthy, stay safe, and see you next year in the new video.